Welcome to the Games Freezer.
Hi, welcome. Come on in. Welcome to the freezer. It's Richard here from gamesfreezer.eu. Today I wanted to talk to you all about which video games gave me that sense of wonder and awe. Mainly from obviously the retro gaming era when I was growing up, and right into more recent times as well, because it is a rarity that you get that sense of wonder and awe from a video game. I mean, it's come about due to the fact that I've been hearing a lot of feedback on the latest Legend of Zelda game on the Switch, and it's kind of a throwback to those times when you'd open up a game, start playing it for the first time, and really be thrown into that video gaming world. So I thought I'd write an article on it and read that through with you today to give you a bit of a taster for what articles we feature on Games Freezer at the minute. A lot of opinion pieces, reviews, and all sorts of other stuff that we like to try out on you guys to see what you like. So, having watched from afar as the gaming world infuses over The Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild, I've noticed a common theme with the reviews and opinions of the game. Gamers are infusing about the game, taking them back to the days when video games induced wonder and awe, much like the original Legend of Zelda on the NES did. You know the games I mean. These are the video games which made your mouth open wide as you felt like you were transported to the video gaming world portrayed on your screen. And that's really taking you back to when you were young. These were the video games that made you feel like you were exploring a new land and you were the main character. So it's this kind of feeling that the video game was breaking down that barrier and allowing you to get into the world that you were playing the game in, which is something you can't do really with movies, and that for me was an eye-opener as a youngster. So over the years, as franchises get those sequels, it's harder to actually recreate that sense of wonder and awe, as gamers know really what to expect in the next instalment. And developers rarely want to stray too far from that tried and tested methods and mechanics that they've implemented in the previous games. So you don't want to let your fans down from the previous game, and you kind of stick to the same track with maybe some twists, but essentially the same game, different story. So in that respect, it makes it even more of a feat that Nintendo have been able to recreate those feelings felt by children from 1986 in the current day in 2017. You know, those people that were playing the original Legend of Zelda on the NES, and when they started exploring and finding the secrets of this marvellous video game, it really was something different from anything that was out there at that moment in time. It really brought it home that graphics could just be upped a little notch and create even more of a world that you could get involved in. You know, the early games on the Atari 2600, they had the stories they really wanted to tell, but you really had to dig deep into your imagination to recreate the actual scenery, etc. Whereas the NES was able to do that at a better rate. You know, it had better graphics. You're able to maybe understand what they were trying to get across and immerse yourselves in those worlds. So, it's a special moment in any gamer's life, and there are only a small number of games really throughout your lifetime that you can truly feel that awe and that wonder when you play them, either for the first time or reoccurring awe and wonder when you go back to them. So I'm going to name 5 of those games, and I hope you'll have a go at it too, because it's good fun to try and think back to those ones that really did make a difference. So let me know how you get on in the comments box below. But here are my 5 games that left me wide-eyed and in awe when I first played them. Number 1 on the list is Last Ninja 2 on the Commodore 64. Now for me, this was a real eye-opener to what could be achieved in an open world type game. And I say open world because it felt like you could do anything in this at the time. Obviously I know now that that wasn't the case, but as a youngster at the age of 9 years old, it really did feel like you were exploring this massive central park scenery and really interacting with it as well. So for a Commodore 64 to have scenery that you could interact with and explore was just mind-blowing for my tiny head at the age of 9 years old. It came as a pack-in title for my mate Paul's Commodore 64, along with Wetlands, which wasn't a great game. It used to take ages to load, as did most games at the time, and then when you actually played it, it was a bit of a letdown. But obviously you waited so long, you used to play it. But when it came to Last Ninja 2, that was the only game that we ever really wanted to play on the Commodore 64 at the time. The sense of being in a film with moving characters made me feel like anything was possible with video games, and that was the point with this one. It really did feel like I was a part of the story when I was playing, and we'd play obviously with one playing and the other one advising and telling each other what to do, or how to beat that next tricky part. And it was a brilliant game, absolutely fantastic, and lives with me to this day. And it's one of the ones that I'd like to see remade on the current generation. But that's a story for another day. Okay, the next one up we've got is number 2 on the list, which is Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis. And this was on the Amiga. Obviously, it was on across a number of other devices and platforms, but where I played it was on the Amiga. Even the box on this game I loved. I mean, I'm a big Indiana Jones fan, and for me to have a video game where you can really feel like you're immersed in the Indiana Jones world and actually feel like you're Indy is just awesome. And still today it's a great game to play. I played it recently and actually completed it after all the time that it's taken me to actually do that, because I got stuck at the time when I was probably about 12 or 13, and we didn't really have internet to lean on to get past the next bit. So I got stuck and never really played it beyond that point. But then more recently I got back into it, downloaded it onto my mobile phone using ScumVM, and played through it, and it was just as good, if not better, this time around. Marvellous. Really sort of get a sense for how intricate the game was as well, playing it again. Obviously now that I understand and appreciate how games are made, it was a great feat, along with a lot of the other games of that era that were point and click. Obviously I haven't mentioned Monkey Island 1 or Monkey Island 2, two other awesome games in a similar vein, but I've chosen Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis due to the fact, such a massive Indiana Jones fan, this really did leave me with my mouth wide open. I was bowled over by the sense of starring in an indie film. I was indie and I loved it. Whipping things, solving puzzles and getting the girl was just this amazing moment in my video games life. I fell in love at that point with point and click adventures, and retrospectively went back and played through other point and clicks due to this game, and leading to my love for Monkey Island and my anticipation for the Thimbleweed Park game that's coming up very soon, which I can't wait to play, from Ron Gilbert. Brilliant. The ore in this game was built by the atmosphere and the need to think things through very carefully. So atmosphere wise, the music was spot on, the locations were brilliant all across the world. It was just a great game to play, and obviously the puzzles being very challenging in my eyes as a youngster, and even still so at the age of 36 when I played it. So you know, they were still challenging for me to get through, and I had to lean on the internet a little bit at points. So the one that really threw me out, the puzzle that just killed it for me, was lining up those sundial things. I don't know if you remember that part, if you've played it. You sort of got to line up the sundials so they go in a particular pattern, and it took me another 20 years to work that out after I revisited the game, as I mentioned before, and watched a walkthrough on YouTube. Sorry about that, it had to be done. I had to complete this game finally. So that is Indy and the Fate of Atlantis on the Amiga. Next up is one of my all-time favourite games across any platform, something that really did change the way I looked at video games, and also changed my world as a console owner. Number 3 on my list is Super Mario World on the Super Nintendo. Now, I'm a great lover of platform games, and this one is the king of all platform games, without a doubt. It's the first game on the SNES. I love the SNES, and I love this game. The awe in this game was brought about by the sheer expanse of levels that I was asked to guide Mario through. 99 levels at the time were unheard of. The graphics, the music, and the sheer perfection of the controls, all moulded with the best joypad ever invented, made this the most awe-inspiring platformer that there has ever been. For me, Nintendo never fully got the sense of awe from, say, Mario 64 or Mario Galaxy. And I don't think they could ever recreate that perfection and the perfect storm of the new console being released at the time. Who's to say they won't? They might well prove me wrong, as they have done with Legend of Zelda. So that's number 3 on the list. So next up was Grand Theft Auto on the PS1. PlayStation 1 being the console that kind of changed the world of gaming at the time. Sort of went to the levels of adult video gaming, in my opinion. You had at that point the move away from the cartoony graphics and more into the realistic type graphics, maybe something that the PC was also trying at the time. So I moved from a Super Nintendo, which is very much your standard Nintendo family based console, to the PS1, and I really felt that change right there and then. So with Grand Theft Auto, the original, you really did see what was possible in a more realistic, gritty video game, such as Grand Theft Auto. The awe here was brought on by the openness of the gameplay. I could basically do whatever I wanted in whatever order I wanted, and I could drive any car I wanted at any speed I want. So it's something that you'd never experience with anything else in the video games world at the time. This pixelated top-down universe had the most potential of any game I'd ever played. My mind played out scenarios and I would try them and they would work, which was a first in video games from me, because you'd always normally think, oh, if only I could do that, whereas it felt like in Grand Theft Auto you could actually do whatever you wanted. It was the first ever true sandbox open choice video game that I'd played, and it stuck with me forever, much like Last Ninja 2 did at the time with the Commodore 64. Again, it just felt so open and fresh, and it really did seem like it gave you the power and handed that to the player to sort of interpret that world how they felt. Obviously GTA 3 came along later and took that to the next level on the PS2, but I have to admit that it did also leave me open-mouthed as it was taken into the third-person view. So there was a bit of a debate whether I would include GTA 3 or GTA 1, but for me GTA 1 just beat GTA 3 to this place, as it was the original gangster, and no one can deny that. A legendary game by a great video games company, with a lot of talented individuals working there. Brilliant stuff. So now we've done number 4, let's move on to number 5, which is Bioshock on the Xbox 360. Now this game really impacted me a lot through the trailer. There's been a few games where I've felt the need to buy a game through a trailer. One of those was Gears of War 2, which actually led to me buying the Xbox 360 specifically through that trailer, and seeing that in the cinema, it really hit me, and I felt like I needed to get back into video games at that point in the current generation. So that was really awe-inspiring for me. But Bioshock, that trailer where the Big Daddy comes along and attacks you, just left me speechless. I just wanted to know what this story was all about, and why the hell you're in this kind of hell-like universe, and it was brilliant stuff. So Bioshock was basically built on a number of very key things that all the best storytelling games use nowadays. Bioshock had the world you wanted to lose yourself in, which is a great start, even though it was a dead scary world. Bioshock had like an intriguing and gripping story. So Bioshock has the scariest adversaries of all, in all of video games really. Big daddies. So this game still sends shivers down my spine to this day. I watched the trailer for it and knew I had to play it, even though those big daddies gave me nightmares. The plot and the world work together to bring this twisted story to life through the player's eyes. Never before have I felt dread and excitement from a video game. It felt like playing a clever, well-directed film rather than a video game. There have been other games since that have almost matched this level of story and world, but Bioshock for me had that wow factor that I'll never forget. And at the time it really was a genre-defining video game that just left me constantly thinking about it, and the small details within the world, spot on, from the Bioshock team at 2K. So next up is one of my favourite games of all time, on the PS3. Another game that really changed the landscape of video games for the better, and that is The Last of Us on PlayStation 3 by those talented dudes at Naughty Dog. So this game was truly the last great game I played. I mean, I've played plenty of video games since this, but they've never really matched up to the great status that this gave to me. I mean, this really was a special game that I just couldn't pull myself away from. The awe in this game came from the sheer emotions I felt whilst playing it, which was something new for me really, to feel that emotionally involved in a video game. You only really get that feeling when you watch a movie, and you get emotionally involved in the characters and the story and the plot, you know. I was totally invested in the characters and every decision that had to be made. I hung on to every piece of dialogue and every word uttered by every NPC in the game. I wasn't waiting for cutscenes to finish as I would normally do in other games. I was actually looking forward to the next part of the story as I played my way through the beautiful and yet tragic landscapes of the earth. So if Naughty Dog could give us The Last of Us 2 that can be half as good as this amazing game, I'll be happy. I'm guessing that Naughty Dog will probably match the TLOU experience, as they are that good at making games that really matter, and I really hope that's true. So that's number 6, and that's my list. So hopefully within this list of 6 I've been able to portray exactly why these games brought about awe and wonder, and really portray that to you through this monologue that I've been doing. The interesting thing is that the first game in that list brought that feeling when I was 9 years old. You know, this is a long time ago. The Last of Us game, the last game that I talked about delivered that feeling when I was 36, 27 years on, and that was The Last of Us. And video games are still giving me that feeling of wonder and awe to this day. So what a wonderful medium video games truly are, and we're truly realising now as they mature. So I hope that you've given a bit of thought to your list, and maybe you can think about which games would make your list and why, and drop them into the comments box below. That would be marvellous. Anyway, this is Richard from Games Freezer. I'll see you in the freezer. Stay frosty.
www.gamesfreezer.eu